All right. Here's a moderator question. We'll start with you, Bill. A lot of these people may not know your background. All of you didn't have introductory statements, didn't have a chance to talk your background. I want to know one thing out of your background. One thing, one incident, one life experience, one event that uniquely qualifies you to be a congressman. I told you to be hard.
One event. For me, it's the time when I decided that I need to go back in the Marine Corps. After 18 years, not in the civilian world, I saw the divisiveness, the politicization of the war, 2005, and it became evident to me that I needed to get back into the military after 18 years. Why is that important? It demonstrates service, it demonstrates a willingness to sacrifice one's family to get back into the military, and also to put one's life at risk for this great country. Thank you.
I think the one event that qualifies me for this uniquely for this race and for this district is the service that I served on board USS Stonewall Jackson, a ballistic missile submarine off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. I went from being a business major in college at the University of Washington to becoming a nuclear engineer through the Navy Nuclear Power School. I served 5 years on that submarine, and I qualified as a nuclear engineer and a strategic weapons officer. I uniquely understand the needs of this district because I know what goes on a submarine base. I know what goes on in shipyards and dry docks. I've lived it. I can speak to that, and I can speak to the people who work in those facilities, who perhaps their union leadership is supporting our Democratic opponent, but they're not too happy about it, and they want an alternative. So that experience of mine uniquely plays to this district.
Thank you.
It's very easy. There's an image that sticks out in my head over and over again. It's on South 15th and 5th Street in Tacoma. Sitting, this might sound like a cliche example, but sitting on a corner, waiting for the school bus. My mom was there watching my brother and me. It was snowing out, and my feet were freezing. I had holes in my shoes. And I can remember sitting there and looking at the kids right next to me that were on welfare. They had Nike Air Jordans on. Prime shoes, $100 shoes. And I remember coming home that day and asking my mom, why is it that they can have that and we don't? What are we doing wrong? And she says, Jesse, I am not going to cheat the system. Jesse, I'm going to work for what we earn. And I want you to follow that example because it's the key to success. And to have her articulate that to me, and to articulate to my brother, is the reason why we were able to rise up out of that environment while all my other friends are still wearing Nike Air Jordans but are on welfare. And to have that conviction in your soul is the reason why I think I'm the best candidate for the job. Thank you.
I single-handedly created this opportunity that we have. I destroyed Norm Dix's career. I was there alone with the courage necessary to call him corrupt to his face. I was a person who exposed the extreme corruption that he was involved in. I sent private investigators to talk to the female lobbyist that was being ran, or was earmarked hundreds of millions of dollars. She wouldn't admit when anything was going on, but she was shaking like a leaf. We knew we were on to something. I attacked. I've demonstrated that I have the courage, the strength, the intellect, the outright rightness of purpose that is necessary in these difficult times. We're in a crisis situation. We need people that have demonstrated achievement, not people who have pie-in-the-sky ideas. I am ready for this opportunity that I created. I destroyed Norm Dix's career.
Franklin, we'll start with you on this one. How would you define the relationship between the United States and Israel? If you were in the House, what would be your goal?
Well, first of all, I have to be very honest. I am a Christian Zionist. I fully support the right of Israel to defend itself. And I would no longer put shackles on Israel and blackmail them to tell them they can't defend themselves. Now, I do feel that foreign aid, we don't have the money for foreign aid. But we give a lot of technology to Israel, and they improve it for us, and then we own the intellectual property rights for that. So in my mind, that's a joint venture for R&D for our military, and that should be within the military budget, not foreign aid. I fully support the one ally that the ally in this world that has always supported us. They're the most reliable ally we've ever had in this world. The Jews in Europe actually contributed to George Washington's campaign to keep our military alive during the Revolutionary War. If it wasn't for their contributions from Europe, we wouldn't have the freedom that we have today.
Thank you.
I fully support the United States always backing in each and every instance, standing with Israel and letting them decide their future, but always standing with them. And I'd be willing to sign a treaty or support a treaty that would say in each and every instance, we will always be there as an ally to Israel, regardless. We won't try to sit there and dictate their policy. We'll let them dictate their policy, but stand with them 100%. That includes coming out and talking about what this Arab Spring is really doing. You watch what happens if the Muslim Brotherhood takes over Egypt and what will happen to their treaty. The United States should come out now and say what we would do in support of Israel, what we would do in terms of the Sunni-Shia relationships, whether that affects Hamas in the south or Hezbollah in the north. I would always stand fundamentally strong with Israel, and I think the United States should declare it and state it. And I would also support moving our embassy to Jerusalem. Thank you.
Well, it depends on the circumstances, doesn't it? Every political problem has a different set of circumstances. Right now, certainly, we should support Israel. There may be a time that we shouldn't. We don't know. I do think it is important, however, to keep our link with God's chosen people and their chosen homeland, obviously. But let's be real here. You can't make blanket statements about any aspect of policy without knowing the circumstances that are current at that time. So that's my answer to that.
Israel is really the only democracy in the Middle East. From that emanates economic strength, defensive strength, and it's an important ally for the United States. The United States has stood with Israel throughout its history. Israel has been a beacon for people coming from the oppressive regimes of the Soviet Union. It's been, again, a beacon for freedom, and it's important for us to stick with Israel. I do agree, though, with Doug that there are times that you have to keep an open mind and cannot give them a blank check.
Next question. What is the role of the federal government in education? Mr. Young.
How about no role? As your congressman, I will support and actively try to achieve a block granting of the money back to the states to start the process of transitioning away from the Department of Education so that it no longer exists. The truth is, our children are suffering. In my industry, up and down the West Coast, very few people that are natively born in the United States do what I do. They're all coming from India and China. The top IT institutes in the world are in India now. We are getting outcompeted. The results are not there. Send it back to the states and let the states come up. You in this room are capable of coming up with a solution that will work for this state. Now, I think the states should compete, and that's the first step towards making this a viable solution for our kids. I would also advocate this. I would personally advocate letting the money follow the children. Let the parents have some true parental choice. Thank you.
Well, a couple weeks ago I sent around a newsletter that outlined the fact that since the Department of Education was formed, there's been no statistically significant increase in test scores. So therefore, despite the billions and billions and billions of dollars spent, nothing has happened. They haven't moved the needle at all. So therefore, it's an ineffective use of our money. And I would suggest that the federal government gets totally out of the education business. And I'll tell you why. Because with each dollar, it's always a kind of a golden handshake where you got conditions. You have to teach this course this way. It becomes an indoctrination thing. Education now is a lot of waste of time. I can tell you right now, as a lawyer, I could have learned all the skills necessary to be a lawyer within probably 18 months after I graduated from high school. We have wasted our youth's time, we have wasted our youth's creativity and energy with this ridiculous emphasis on straitjacket education.
I believe very strongly in pushing as much responsibility and authority as close to the customer as possible, whether that customer is the 6-year-old student in grade school, the college senior. Push it as close to the people as to the client, the customer as possible. So give as much authority to the principals and the teachers as local as possible. That translates in terms of the federal government getting out of education, pushing those resources, pushing that authority to the states and local governments and local school boards as closely as possible. Again, having as much competition, much innovation as possible at the local level.
Those of you who know me know I tend to always view things through the prism of the Constitution. And I find no part of the Constitution that enumerates a power for the federal government to handle education. Ergo, that belongs to the states, and we the people within our individual states. So, like Jesse, I'm for dismantling the Department of Education. Send that back to the states. Because right now, the federal government acts like the mafia. They take their 10 or 20% cut, they send the money back, and then they tell you what to do. Has the federal government from on high ever known better than the people what to do? Is the department, does education exist today in our country better than it did before the Department of Education? Then get rid of it.
Next question.